Welcome. I am Dr. Jason Morales, and let's look at creating histograms in Microsoft Excel. So histograms are visual representations of the data. And so from a visual representation, you can see if there is a pattern. So this Microsoft Excel tutorial is going to follow the principles that we learned in class. And in Microsoft Excel, there are two methods for creating histograms. So one I've called histogram method 1, and the other one I've called histogram method 2. And so to do histogram method 1, this is more of an easier, kind of more quote native function of Microsoft Excel. And after you're done formatting the histogram, this is what it's going to look like. But if you create a histogram using method 2, this is what it's going to look like. And you'll notice that there are some subtle but important differences between the two. Number one, you can see here the x-axis using method 1 is labeled with intervals. And this is something that you cannot change. And the downside of this is that these intervals are much too long, so they have to be oriented vertically. And because they're oriented vertically, they take up a lot of space in the graph. And so because they take up so much space, it leaves less space for your histogram bins or these vertical bars here. So it kind of compresses and condenses your graph, which is less visually appealing. Whereas if we contrast that with method 2, you can see instead of intervals, which label each bin, it's midpoints instead. And labeling with only midpoints takes up less space, which then frees up more space in your plot area for your actual histogram. So this looks better from that perspective than method 1 over here. Another difference that you'll see is look at the frequency counts for the first bin, or the first couple bins. You've got 10, 33, and 28. And over here, you have 6, 31, and 29. So the frequencies of these first few bins are different. Now, even though there are 16 bins or 16 classes here, and there's an identical number of classes here, the widths of these two are a little bit different. And the reason why these widths are different is because of the range that's covered. So you'll notice that this first class, the interval is from 8 to 32. Now, to give some context to these numbers relate to the vertical height of roller coasters in the United States. And so there's actually a roller coaster that's only 8 feet high, okay, in this data set that I have. So because we've got, a vertical height of 8 feet, which is not very high, it makes sense to actually include 0 in our first class or in this first bin. But using method 1 in Microsoft Excel, we don't have the chance to really kind of customize that. So we can't include 0. It actually starts for us with our minimum value, which is 8. But if you contrast that with method 2, you can actually start your first class with whatever number you want. So I wanted to start the first class with 0, and I calculated a width of 27. So the first class goes from 0 to 27, and then the second class goes from 27 to 54, and so on. And so you do need a little bit more preparation to use method 2. So you need to put your lower class boundaries for all your classes in one column. And then you need to calculate the midpoints for each of those classes in another column. But once you have these two columns filled out, it will kind of generate this frequency table for you. And then it will generate a histogram for you that you can then format to get it to this state, which looks much better. And so even though we've got a midpoint of 13.5, this interval goes from 0 to 27. So it includes 0 down here in the first bin. So, arguably, this histogram using method 2 is a better histogram, gives you more control, presents the data a little bit better than method 1, and it's not much more difficult to apply. So this is what we'll cover in the following sections, is how to use method 2 in order to create a histogram and format it so it looks like this. So anytime is a good time to learn, so let's get started.